Hello, I am Niall Savage, current Head of Audit Markets in KPMG, and welcome to Series 2 of Conversations with Auditors, our podcast where we look at the key issues, opportunities and new ways of working that are shaping our profession, auditing. Today I'm delighted to be joined by our ESG assurance lead, Eva Sheehy. Eva is an expert in CSRD and is going to tell us a little bit more about the standards coming our way and maybe how things are looking and how people are approaching it. And Shane O'Reilly. Shane was ESG manager for one of Ireland's largest PLCs and currently is managing director of our Sustainable Futures practice. Shane is here to shed a bit of an operational light on how people are going about getting all this data and information that's needed. Welcome both.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Niall. Lovely to be here.
Thank you. Let's start off. We're done. The standards are in. Are we ready to go? Do people know what they're doing?
I think so. I think at this stage, the ESRS standards were finalised in July. They have been out for a number of months now. Companies are coming to terms and grappling with applying those new standards for their business. At the moment, they're sector agnostic standards, so they apply to any industry, no matter what industry a business is in. They're applying the same set of standards. They're made up of 12 standards. There's 2 general standards, so that's general disclosures, general requirements, and then there are 10 sector topical standards that cover everything from environmental, social and governance standards. So a full suite of standards. They're in since July. Everyone's now applying them, completing their double materiality assessments, their gap analysis to prepare for the CSRD. So there's no waiting now. The standards are coming, and there has been additional draft guidance that's come in on double materiality, on value chain analysis, and those data points that everyone is talking about now. There's a lot of data points. Companies are talking about those now, and those implementation guidelines that are coming in are to help businesses comply with the CSRD. So there's additional tools coming, and then in due course there will be sector specific standards coming from 2026 to help businesses down the line.
Okay, but it feels like there's a little bit of certainty. People know when they're going to report. The standards are there. They should know what they're going to report at some point in time.
Yeah.
So paint a picture of me, like what is it going to look like now when it lands and people start reporting?
So I think what it will look like is going to be different for every business. The starting point really for this is completing a double materiality assessment. So that's where a business is going in to determine of the standards across pollution, water, own workforce, governance, what areas are material for my business and then require disclosure. That determines what governance structures, policies, metrics and targets need to go into a report. So every business will start their sustainability report with areas such as background information, their strategy, their business plan, their approach to stakeholder engagement. And then after that, it will be the results of the double materiality assessment that determines the full suite of information that then needs to be included in their sustainability report. And that's what's going to require assurance. So the first wave of businesses that will be showing us their sustainability reports is wave 1. They're required to report in FY24 data in 2025, and this is our large EU PI businesses with over 500 employees. So I think it'll be really interesting, especially for the first few years, the sustainability reports that are coming down the line.
Some of the conversations we're having, Niall, around what it's actually going to look like and what good would look like is quite different from many organisations. So if you think of the organisations that are in wave 1 who already have potentially a sustainability report in place, they're now looking at, well, what does this look like going forward? Some of this is going to have to be evidence-based. It's now sitting in our annual report, which is already a tomb of an exercise for many PLCs and large businesses. And now it's going to have 50 pages, another 100 pages. What is it going to look like? So we're having a lot of these really interesting conversations about what actually needs to sit from a regulatory perspective in the annual report. But the legacy sustainability report is still very, very important because it has a lot of the narrative, it has the stories, it has the images, it has what a company is actually doing, good, bad or indifferent when it comes to the ESG agenda. And companies are reluctant to let that pass up. They want to keep that going because it is far more than just a regulatory document. It is something for ESG rating agencies, it is for wider stakeholders, it is for customers, it is for suppliers and a whole host of, and staff, exactly. Yeah.
And you've landed on a number. You've given me 50 to 100 pages. Is that what we're seeing or expect to see, or can people go as long on this as they want, or could they condense it even shorter? I'm really dying to see what they look like because I've talked about it so much.
Yeah, we all are. I think. And I think in the first couple of years they're going to go long because they're a bit unsure about being called out for any other reason, for like comply and explain criteria. So they're likely to be long, they're likely to be arduous, a bit turgid probably, but no one wants to be called out as in missing something or leaving something out. And the whole focus of CSRD is that comparable information. And you just don't want to be called out in it. So in our work we're doing with our clients, it is get it in, let's see what the shape of the first few years look like. We know what minimum looks like. What do you want to do after that is entirely up to you.
It'd be a shame if it ended up as a boilerplate document though, wouldn't it? It could undermine the real good in it if it just became, something that was the same everywhere and actually didn't give a flavour or a feel. That'd be fair.
I don't think that it will come to that. From what I've seen with clients that I'm working with, there are those that are, really excited and want to paint the picture of what they're doing as a business from a sustainability perspective. So I think the types of reports that will come out here will be varied, and I think we will see who's really has this at top of their agenda versus those that are treating it more as a compliance exercise maybe at this stage.
That'd be great. You agree,
Yeah, absolutely,
yeah, that's brilliant. So, for us it's all about the report, but for all our clients who are talking to at the moment, they're taking deep breaths. They know there's a lot of work to do. Operationally, what have you seen? What have you seen the ESG teams, the person who's been anointed the czar of ESG in the organisation, how have they set up and how have they gone about this practically, from a couple of years out?
Yeah, so again, it sometimes comes down to scale. If you're a larger organisation, you might have bodies at an operational level. You can assign a particular side of desk piece of work to work with finance teams, and the finance teams, without doubt, are actually taking the lift on this. Whereas, in practical terms, they're the custodians of the data ultimately, but they haven't generated the data. Right? It's come from the operations. It's come from other support functions. So the kind of steering group, if you like, of individuals tasked with pulling this together is really a mix, right? And that's fine if you have bodies to spare, right? There are plenty of organisations where people are not sitting around with spare time, right? So that's a real challenge, and it's taken I would say the finance teams and sustainability teams for the most part coming together like they haven't before, I would say. There's a real regulatory piece and rigour that the finance team bring to this non-financial data, which the sustainability teams haven't had that necessarily lens applied to them in the past before. It's been very self-regulated. There have been a small number or selection of KPIs that might have been assured to a particular degree over time, but that's not uniform, right? And interpretation of data hasn't been uniform. Clearly the alignment of strategy and policy and understanding impacts, all of this is new. So it has been, as we see it so far at least anyway, a real coming of minds between the support functions and finance and the operation side of things.
I know.
I think I'm completely seeing the same as well as what Shane is seeing, and clients I think typically approach this where it first sits with finance, or it's finance team's job because it's part of the annual report. They're responsible for the whole report, but quite quickly businesses are realising this requires a full firm approach to this. Like a full business needs to be on board. You need to have the buy-in all the way from your audit committee, your board of directors, right down through the functions of a business. And I think it requires all teams from finance to be included, but it needs your HR, it needs your operations, sales teams, procurement, all on board with the agenda, because all the data, as Shane was saying, is coming from various elements of the business as well. It needs to have that full firm view, I think, to be successful.
It screams as best practice. Most organisations I've been going into, some poor soul from finance has been lumped with the job and they don't know how to go about it next. I suppose the first good step might be to get that steering committee across the whole. Brilliant. And what is the time commitment like? Like, you've put a number on pages, which was great. What are we thinking hours like in range? What should people be budgeting for? Because I think people know there's a load of work, but they really you need numbers, you need to understand what it's going to take.
Yeah, I mean, it's a full-time job, right? I would say in the readiness piece, getting to understand what it means for the organisation. If you're budgeting, I can do 4 or 5 hours inside of my desk here, you haven't been advised properly, I would say, right? So it is a heavy lift, even if you have an established non-financial reporting framework and a sustainability report, etc. A sustainability report already takes hundreds of man hours to get it over the line, particularly if you've got a very high level of reporting against maybe CDP, FTSE for Good, MSCI, DJSI, all the big ESG reporting metrics that are voluntarily reported against now. They take hundreds of man hours to get this information together. CSRD is that and more, right? So the message that we've assigned very, very clearly to our clients and anyone that we're working with is that it is hundreds of man hours in the first instance to get this over the line, right? And you need dedicated people looking at this entirely, that they can take a step back, look at the breadth of their operations, look at where it's impacted most. And as Eva said, there are 10 operational standards here that work across environment, social and governance, but they're not all equally weighted. The social side of things has, from a very elemental consideration of it, a lot of labour laws already capturing huge data points from your HR teams. It may sit there and that's it, and may reside there, but now it's going to have to be tapped into a bit more. People are reluctant. Why do you need to know that, right? GDPR doesn't let me give you that information. I was like, no, I'm still part of the same organisation. Now you have to disclose this information. So there's even internally conversations in companies. People are talking that haven't had an opportunity to talk before. And there's that movement of data between functions is onerous, right? And takes a bit of time even to build up trust internally.
It feels like for your average group, you're talking hundreds of hours here to be set aside, not 50 or 60. No, you're laughing at me. The mere thought of it being 50 or 60. Okay. And are people actually surprised when you're going in and saying that to them in the back of their mind? Are they going, oh yeah, no, I know this is a full-time job? Or are they going sort of, okay, we need to tool up for this?
I think there's a lot of surprise sometimes with the amount of commitment that is needed. And once you go through, I suppose, the steps to alignment and how long we're seeing in the market that it is taking, I think businesses are then seeing, actually, we need more resource. And usually it's pooling from teams they already have in a business. It's hard to employ. As we can see in the market, it's very hard to get employees in any department. So usually they're pooling together, what can we do? And they do understand now that there is a bigger uplift. I think that message is getting there, and that it's definitely not a 50-hour job or a side of the desk job.
And what are the challenges we're seeing? So, okay, if we know now it's going to take this amount of hours, we know we should probably have a steering committee. You have a 7-point plan, which I know you roll out on a regular basis, which is fantastic. Where's the rubber hitting the road? What's sticky? What data points are we finding is just difficult?
I think from a reporting boundary perspective, I think that's one of the biggest challenges that I'm seeing at the moment. So coming to terms with the sustainability reporting boundary is vastly different than the financial reporting boundary. And that's sometimes hard to come to terms with. Businesses are used to looking at their financial reporting boundary, their group structure, parent subsidiaries, JVs, associates. Now they have to consider their sustainability reporting boundary, which considers their whole value chain, upstream, downstream activities. So you're looking at your customers, you're looking at your suppliers, a full suite of information to identify who are the key actors in my value chain that could impact on my business, that could lead to a material impact, risk or opportunity. That mindset shift is quite difficult, I think, to jump to. So that's probably the biggest challenge I'm seeing at the moment.
That's really, really interesting. And Shane, what are you seeing? Anything different?
Yeah, so building on that, I think there's a comparability issue that companies are struggling with now.
Okay.
So a year-on-year view of a particular metric. So what does that look like? So from a greenhouse gas emissions perspective, larger organisations are somewhat used to getting emissions data. There's an energy conversion piece that means a CO2, and they're somewhat comfortable with it.
Yeah.
Understanding from a strategy perspective what Eva said about impacts, risks and opportunities relative to that metric is very, very new, right?
Yeah.
And it might be a nugget of information, or it might be a nugget of expertise held in a very small part of the organisation that now needs to be expanded upon, that the leadership team need to understand what all those impacts, risks and opportunities mean.
What's an example of the little nugget of information? Like what are we talking about here? Like, is it something like water usage or emissions, or what could it be? I'm fascinated.
So pollution is catching a lot of companies.
Okay,
right?
brilliant. Yeah.
So what do you mean by that? So they're trying to understand, well, surely I'm licensed by a regulatory body for my water discharge, etc. Fine, that's a compliance piece, I'm done, there's a box ticked, there's a form filled, someone stamps it, and we're out of here.
Yeah.
Now you're asked to look at what is the strategy behind the generation of that foul water or wastewater, right? What metrics are you using to capture that information? What strategy have you in place to mitigate or ameliorate that in the first place, right? And this might be tens of millions of litres of an output from a factory setting, and now you're asked to actually think about what that means for the operation somewhere up the value chain of that piece of kit. Yeah. And that's not part of people's thinking. So now they have to kind of define that. It used to just be, that's a number for our local authority that they know we produced that, the temperature of it was that, the pollutants was this. That's only the starting block from now. So a lot of organisations are struggling with pollution. It looks very simple in the standard. Yeah. That's not the case. And if you apply that to the other 9 standards, and what ones are material to you, you start to get an idea of the scale of questions that management team now have to get their heads around. And that's where, to your point, the sticking point is that granularity that does not sit with that engineer that stamped that piece of paper for the last 10 years. He's now in the limelight as to what are you going to do about it? Yeah. Right? What are we going to do about it? And that's quite a seismic shift in approach to non-financial reporting data.
That's great insight. That's great insight. And what happens if it's so sticky you can't get it? What are the consequences? I think there's plenty of people are worried, I just won't be able to get that information. What happens?
Yeah. I think there's been a lot of phase-in reliefs introduced with the finalisation of the standards, which I think really helps businesses. Over the first 3 years, there's a lot of phase-in reliefs to break down information that you may not have quantitative information for certain data metrics that may not need to be disclosed for the first 3 years. There's particular phase-in reliefs for companies with under 750 employees, which really helps. So it means everything doesn't need to be there for your first year of reporting. Okay. And your first year of reporting as well, you don't need to have comparable information in that first year. So there are benefits that are really helping. I suppose over time, if businesses don't get there over time, there could be qualified reports. They might come down the line, there'll be penalties if businesses don't report. So it really is introducing now is the time to prepare so that you don't end up in that position down the line. Take the phase-in reliefs that will benefit you, will help you get to your first year of reporting, and I think it will work out, that kind of way.
Absolutely. Agree, Shane? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. What I would also say is that companies that are taking advantage of the phasing element of it are still doing the work in the background anyway. Yeah. Right? Because they have the view that our first time reporting on this, if we've gone this far, we might as well get the rest of it in place. These are systems and process changes. And while they may not be reporting on them, they can make incremental improvements in the background without the pressure of the assurance piece, without the pressure of additional scrutiny, without the pressure of failure first time round, if you like. So they're, proactive companies are taking those steps early doors anyway.
Yeah, no, that's very good. Just shifting it a little bit more to the operational side now, great discussions around pollution and trapping it and sort of the perimeter and mindset of how to go about it. Are people using any type of technology? Is there software out there to help them? Is there a complete gap in the market here? Or how are people logging into their computers and doing the work?
So the honest answer is Excel is everyone's friend here.
Excel
right?
heaven.
Absolutely. There are clearly support out of the box ESG software tools that are good at capturing metrics, either at a point of electronic input, so there's a level of automation, or indeed it's back to, my Excel spreadsheet is here, I transfer this number over here, and then on it goes to Eva or Niall or Shane to see where else ever that goes. But they are, I would say, a historic view. They're not necessarily what CSRD is looking for you to capture. So you might very well control the metrics in that format, but it's not going to help you with your necessarily organising all your information so you see your reporting disclosure requirements in a nice little box and a narrative that comes with it. So there's a huge amount of manual scripting and narrative around the metrics. Clearly you have to write your own policies, clearly you have to write your own strategies and implementation plans, etc. So the tech out of the box is behind the curve in this sense, right? So companies are not, they can't even write a check for this to happen for them, right? So there's intermediary steps that will help them control data, but the narrative piece is back on companies still at this point. You're going to see in the SAP and Oracles of this world will start those modules, will start those APIs and add-ons. They're coming, but for reporting now, it's not there just yet.
Yeah. Will AI help?
Potentially on the narrative side of it.
Yeah.
But it still needs an awful lot of scrutiny that you have actually written what actually is happening in the business. So you need what is the input to derive that AI output.
Yeah.
So it's still early doors. I can imagine AI helping with the formative disclosure pieces that it must have the following criteria ticked off, but then is that the English that you would like your company to be written in, and so on. So I can see it progressively. At this point in time, it's not brilliant, but in 2-3 years, I can see it being a key part. Yeah,
you'd have to imagine, given the scale and breadth of the standards, that somebody is going to develop the right tech tool to be used, or it'll just be bolting into your existing ERP.
I think it will have to. In time, it will.
Yeah.
I think everyone's just trying to figure out, what do we have, where is it coming from? It is very manual, as Shane said, and I think because there's a lot of judgment, subjectivity around the metrics, targets, all of that, it is quite manual, it is quite time consuming now. I think it will be over the next few years, we will see somebody or many people coming in with technical solutions that will help businesses with this.
Yeah, and go into the business as opposed to just keep a trial balance on it. That's really important. So that's tech. Training, what should people be doing now in order to familiarise themselves with the standards, get comfortable? Like, is there things that they should be doing or can be doing, or qualifications they can take?
I think there's no kind of prescriptive training there when it comes to this. There are the standards, as we were saying, that have been finalised. There's implementation guidance, which clients and ourselves find really useful when preparing for the CSRD. Internally in KPMG, we've been doing a lot of workshops, sandbox sessions, one-to-one sessions, really to bring this to life. But it is new to everyone and we're all learning as we go. But I think all of those sessions have really helped bring in what will this look like down the line for businesses. But there's no specific, I suppose, prescriptive training when it comes to this yet.
How are you seeing organisations get themselves up the curve on it, Shane?
A bit like ourselves. We've had to sprint and sprint very, very hard from July to now to be ready to be able to have conversations with clients, to tap into our own international network across Europe to go, what are you doing? We're seeing this, can we help you with that? What are you seeing on pollution as an example, and pulling that information back in. And that's just the nature of it. We've had 12 standards released only a number of months ago for the best part of an 18-month turnaround time for PLCs to be reporting against this, that want a dummy year in between, so you're condensing that 18 months down to 6 months. So those sandboxes that Eva spoke about, we've been running, have been oversubscribed, right? So because there's an appetite for that. So everything else is delayed beyond that. So it's up to us as practitioners, as professionals, to fill that void and to be there for our clients in that space.
And steer people in the right direction.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think just to wrap up, I famously said audit is going to save the world a couple of times, usually gets a decent giggle, but it's a great honour for the profession to be at the centre of this, the ability to assure information and hopefully drive good behaviour and good outcomes for the planet and society as a whole. So it wasn't a complete stretch. What do you think this is going to look like in 3 to 5 years?
I think it will eventually become business as usual for companies. They will have to report this. Non-financial reporting will be subject to the same rigour as financial reporting. They have equal prominence now within an annual report. And I think for businesses, it's an opportunity to be a real differentiator in their particular industry, in their market, show what good information they have, what they're doing as a business from a sustainability perspective. And I think it's a really exciting time for change to be that differentiator, to show what they're doing and have overall a positive impact, I suppose, from a reputation point, credibility point, employee satisfaction and retention. There's a lot of positives that can be seen with this objective and the agenda coming.
Same, Shane, a rosy picture in the future?
Yeah, I take a kind of harder view on it, right? So audit might save the world, right?
Thank you.
So I'll give you that piece. But where I see this being hugely important is for operational change.
Okay.
Right? So any organisation that we're talking to, we never start this conversation that this is a reporting mechanism. This is an opportunity, as far as I'm concerned, to really shape operational excellence. So what do we mean by that? So the standards are looking for metrics, the standards are looking for a level of performance, the standards are looking for an improvement. And it's in a coordinated way, and it's organised and it's structured, right? It's brilliant for engineers and chemists, right? And all those people in operations who've been screaming for a mechanism to get this over the line, right? So I can see CSRD, yes, it is a reporting standard. Yes, there's a minimum compliance piece. Yes, it is a heavy lift to even meet that minimum requirement. But absolutely, I see this as an opportunity for operational improvements in organisations, not just from a climate perspective, but that employee piece, that wider stakeholder piece, even the examination in detail of your supply chain and the vulnerabilities of your supply chain, and the resilience that you might need to start thinking about for your organisation in the next 10, 15, 20 years. It's hugely powerful. We haven't even really started to understand the implication of CSRD because our heads are buried in that getting this piece over the line. But as soon as we start to breathe and take a step back, we can see a real operational opportunity here for organisations.
That's great stuff. Thanks very much, Shane, and thanks, Eva. And I think that's a nice positive way to wrap up this episode of Conversations with Auditors. As usual, if you've had any issues or concerns raised by anything that was covered in the podcast or any opportunities that we can help you with, by all means contact Eva or Shane or your normal KPMG representative, who I'm sure will be only too delighted to help you. Thanks very much for listening, and I hope you enjoyed it.